Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anselmo DeLeo. I'm the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the town of Clinton. It is 7:01, and I call this public hearing to order. We have a quorum. This hearing is now in session. Would the clerk please read the roll?
Anselmo DeLeo.
Here.
Alan Travis.
Here.
Michael Rossi.
Here.
Edward Alvarino.
Here.
Pamela Fritz. Here. Christine Hill. Michael Dustin.
Here.
John May.
Here.
James Simons. Maurice Kirkpatrick. Timothy Guerra. Mark Rapuano.
Here.
I understand it's Mark Rapuano's turn to be seated as an alternate in the place of one of the missing full-time members. So I will seat Mark Rapuano in place of Christine Goupil. Will the secretary please read the legal notice?
Legal notice of public hearing August 4th, 2014, 7 p.m., the auditorium. Clinton Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Monday, August 4th, 2014, at 7 p.m. in the auditorium of the Andrews Memorial Town Hall, 54 East Main Street, Clinton, Connecticut, to consider the following. 1. SE 14-043, 140 Norwood Drive, Global Companies LLC, Wholesale Propane Distribution Facility, map 22, block 10, lot 17, zone I-1. Item 2. SE 14-096, 147 East Main Street, H. Paul Hyatt, change of use to retail and accessory apartment, previously approved as SE 04-430, map 67, block 62, lot 15, zone village. Item 3, AR 14-030, amendment to the zoning regulations and zone map, section 3 definitions, section 20 interchange development zone, IDZ, section 23 districts, section 24.2 non-residential schedule of uses, section 25.11 non-residential lot requirements, standards, and zoning map. Item 4, AR 14-099, amendment to the zoning regulations, section 3.7.6 farming operations, section 10.32 farms, section 24.1.44 residential schedule of uses, section 24.2.44 non-residential schedule of uses. It said hearing all persons will have the right to be heard and written communications received. The applications and accompanying maps are available for public inspection in the Land Use Office of the Andrews Memorial Town Hall. The text and map of the amendments is also available in the Town Clerk's Office. Clinton Planning and Zoning Commission, Anselmo DeLeo Chairman. This was emailed to the Harbor News to appear 2 times, Thursday, July 24th, 2014, and Thursday, July 31st, 2014. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to reorder the agenda to visit item 2, SE 14-096, in front of item SE 14-043.
There's a motion and a second to move item 2 up to item 1. And is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? The ayes have it. Item 2 is now the first item on the agenda. That is SE 14-096, 147 East Main Street, H. Paul A.R. Is there any correspondence on that item?
Yes, sir. The correspondence list received through August 4th, 2014 for SE 14-096, 147 East Main Street. We have a June 6th, 2014 review letter and an August 4th, 2014 review letter, all items addressed.
Thank you. Commissioner Goupil just walked in at 7:07. I am going to seat her, obviously she's a full member, and have Mark Rapuano, who was previously seated for her, now seated for James Stone. Okay, is there an applicant or representative of the applicant for 147 East Main Street, SC 14096? Yes, sir. Incidentally, I just want to apologize for having set up a barrier between the audience and ourselves. We didn't do it. We tried to change this format. We weren't able to do it. Staff did its best to address it. I think you can hear us. I'm sorry you're so far away, but we'll muddle through it as best we can. And I will have other comments a little bit later on when we get to item number 1, which is now in second place. Okay, applicant. You want to come up, sir? Anything you would like to say?
Hi, this is an application that previously approved in 2004. It's for the renovation of an apartment and to make storage into commercial. It was previously approved in, like I said, 2004. That's it.
All right, is anyone here in favor? I'm sorry, opposed to this application? Anyone opposed to this application? Anyone opposed to this application? Anyone that wishes to speak in favor of the application? Anyone that wishes to speak in favor of the application? One more time, anyone that wishes to speak in favor of the application? Commissioners, do you have any questions? Questions? Then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing. 14-096, 147 East Main Street, H. Paul A. Yacht.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Public hearing is closed on item 2, moved up to number 1, SC 14096. Thank you. Okay. SC 14-043, 140 Norwood Drive, Global Companies LLC. This is a continued public hearing. This is the third public hearing in this matter. Would the secretary please read all correspondence that has not been previously read?
We have 2 correspondence lists. One is received through August 1st, 2014. This includes a July 10, 2014 rebuttal response from applicant presentations and curriculum vitae for Robert F. Lewandowski, an undated letter from Elaine Crowley, July 21st, 2014 letter from Diane W. Whitney, Pullman and Conley LLC, requesting a copy of the town plan of conservation and development is included as part of the record. July 23rd, 2014 memorandum from Global Companies LLC, subject special exception 14-043, 140 Norwood Drive, compliance with special exception criteria. July 28, 2014, peer review propane distribution facility, Norwood Drive, from James G. Bubaras, PE. Received July 30, 2014, forum, proposed propane facility threatens Clinton, Madison, and Shoreline by David R. Cameron, dated Saturday, July 12, 2014. July 31st, 2014, memo from Dylan Remley, Forum, correcting information about propane. July 30, 2014, memorandum from Diane W. Whitney, Pullman and Conley LLC, summary of preemption issues. A July 31st, 2014, reply to Global Company, late filed submissions from Hammonasset Environmental Trust. July 31st, 2014, impact analysis of the proposed Clinton propane terminal by Heather Clinton, Realtor, with cover letter by Ron Olinson. Submitted July 31st, 2014 by Hammonasset Environmental Trust, United States Securities and Exchange Commission Form 10K Annual Report for Global Companies LLC for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2012. Submitted July 31st, 2014 by Hammonasset Environmental Trust, specific pages of Form 10K. July 31st, 2014 memo from Douglas Traynor, Chairman of the Economic Development Commission, mandated response to Global's opposition to complying with fencing regulations from Ron Boddenson. A July 30th, 2014 letter from Frederick Petcher, member of the Hammonasset Environmental Trust.
I understand Mr. Alvarino wishes to recuse himself? Yes. All right, Mr. Alvarino, I'm not going to ask you a reason, but you can please vacate the premises because you can't hear anything. In case you're wondering, Mr. Alvarino just made a statement to me indicating that he needs to recuse himself from this hearing. So I have honored that request. There's no need to explain why. I don't need to know why. He feels he has some sort of an issue with participating in the hearing, and he is asked to leave. And we have to wait till he has completely left before we continue to have any discussion whatsoever or addressing the correspondence at this point. In case you're wondering.
Okay. Just in case I didn't get this one right. July 30, 2014 letter from Frederick Feature, member of the Hammonasset Environmental Trust. July 31st, 2014 memorandum from Diane W. Whitney, information regarding property values. And then we have correspondence list number 4, received through August 4th, 2014, and includes an August 3, 2014 letter from Jenny Townsend, an August 4th letter from Gary Borgens, another August 4th, 2014 letter from Gary Borgens, August 4th, 2014 letter from Diane W. Whitney, Independent Research, analysis of Global Partners LP memorandum dated July 31st, 2014 by Heather Clinton, Realtor, submitted August 4th, 2014. Petition with 328 signatures submitted August 4th, 2014. 8 petitions, I'm a shoreline business owner against Global, submitted August 4th, 2014. August 2nd, 2014 letter from Shelley Comstone, and an August 4th, 2014 letter from David R. Cameron. And that concludes the correspondence.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. There was one item of correspondence that I am personally going to read aloud because it was addressed to me as chairman of the Clinton Planning and Zoning Commission. It's from Attorney Diane Whitney. It relates to what's been designated here as an independent research subject matter. Dear Commissioner D'Elia, during the public hearings on the special exception application for 140 Norwood Drive, Commissioners Kravitz, and Fritz have maintained that they have done independent research on issues related to the application. It is a foundation of land use decisions in Connecticut that a commissioner's consideration must be on information contained in the public record of the matter, If a commissioner has personal knowledge of a matter that is not contained in the record, or if he or she conducts research on their own regarding issues before the commission, that information must be disclosed and be included in the record of the application. This is explained in Judge Fuller's books, Land Use and Practice, Section 21-5, in the case of Palmisano versus Conservation Commission, 27 Connecticut Appellate 543, 1992, among other authorities. This is to request that Commissioners Kravitz and Fritz explain their research and put that information in the public record in this matter if they are to vote on it. Thank you for your consideration of this request. Very truly yours, Diane W. Whitney. I have asked our counsel, Attorney Ken Slater, to address this letter, and he is prepared to do so, I believe.
I am. Should I use the microphone? Thank you. Attorney Whitney does describe the law correctly, but I would just like to outline just a couple of principles. One is there's an understanding in land use law that you folks don't come to the table without experience, without opinions. And the critical thing is that as you hear the testimony and hear the evidence in this case, you do so with an open mind. You might have concerns about propane, for example, before you came here today. As long as you as a commissioner can sit there and listen and have not prejudged it and have an open mind, then you're qualified to sit. Now, a related principle is the fairness in the hearing, in which you obviously are going to be deciding on the information that's presented during the hearing, and the applicant and the public should also have an opportunity to know what you're going to consider. So they have an opportunity to comment, they have an opportunity to present rebuttal evidence. There's some kind of general information that you might have. For example, traffic is a classic one. Commission members, you have understanding of traffic in the community. You do not have to put on the record your knowledge of which areas are congested or what your general expectation is of the traffic in the community. Specific knowledge on the topic, on the other hand, is something that you need to reveal on the record. That Palmisano case that was referenced was a case in which a commissioner actually went out and looked for, I believe it was a well, a location of a well, and had a hand-drawn map. And none of this was disclosed during the hearing, and ultimately the commission relied on some of the information that was gathered on that site walk that the applicant wasn't given an opportunity to comment on. That was tangible evidence. If you have any tangible information that you're going to rely on that the public and the applicant don't know about, your obligation is to disclose it and say that you have reason to believe that this might have bearing on the application, and you put it out there so that everyone has a fair opportunity to understand it. Attorney Whitney could suggest that that information is irrelevant, she might agree with you, what have you. If it's just your general understanding and it's not any technical information or some substantive information that you're going to rely on, that the public and the applicant don't know about it, you have no obligation to disclose it. Now there's one other element, which is if you have particular expertise, if there was an issue that involved calculation of the stormwater in a 25-year storm, and you have real expertise in that, you've been trained, and you have reason to question an expert who's presented evidence on that, you need to disclose on the record your expertise. Again, for an opportunity, perhaps you may be asked questions of an applicant. In some instances, you may or may not have to answer them, but at least there's an understanding on the record of what your expertise is. So those are the basic principles, and I would recommend as counsel to the commission, if you did learn about something, you're in the grocery store and somebody hands you a document that relates to the question that's been raised about fencing, for example, and you've read it, present it. This has been handed to you, put it in the record, and that's something that everyone would have an opportunity to review. If somebody mentions something you think is entirely irrelevant, and you're not going to rely on it, and you're not going to share it with the commission, you don't have to put it onto the record. So that's basic parameters I think that the commission should follow in terms of proceeding in this matter. So I'm happy to answer any questions people might have if that doesn't address and confirm much of what Attorney Whitney suggested in her message.
Thank you, Attorney Slater. Every now and then, we all need a little bit of a review or refresher on what our rules are. I am going to give the two commissioners an opportunity to make a statement or disclose any information that they might have that they either will rely on or not rely on. And we're going to start with Mr. Kravitz.
Yes, on, I believe it was June 20th, I received a copy of the Lavengood letter in which he referred to the NFPA 58 2011 version and suggested we adopt that. And I was curious as to the difference between what has been adopted by the state and what was proposed by the applicant and those standards. And I Googled the ordinance, I Googled the code, and as a result, I learned the differences in the code. And the second thing that came up was a reference to the American Petroleum Institute's 2510 code regarding propane. And I was informed that independent research was inappropriate, and I disclosed that. And I also put it in the form of a question at that I asked at the second public hearing regarding the differences between those codes. And it basically, it hasn't influenced me. Those questions haven't influenced me to this point, and I believe that I can make a fair and objective decision.
I was kind of surprised at the letter, frankly, because I haven't done any independent research whatsoever on this subject. The only information I have on this subject is what's been brought before the hearings and the letters and all of the things that are public and that all of you have shared, the commission has posted, etc. So I don't do any, I haven't done, don't intend to do any independent research. So I'm asking questions, certainly as all the commissioners are. And that's my only, the research I'm doing is directly with the company and asking questions of Global or any of the participants themselves. That's really all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Before I go on any further, I just want to mention that I am going to alter the proceedings a little bit tonight for the sake of some expediency, but also for the sake of clarity vis-a-vis commissioners and testimony that may be submitted by the applicant. In the past two hearings, I have allowed the applicant to make the presentation, rebut whatever comments have been made in the previous hearing, and then allow once again the public to speak and address either pro or con the applicant's remarks. Tonight we're going to do it a little bit differently. First, as you all know by now, I have allowed everybody to speak at great length sometimes. In the interest of time, and because we would like to see this matter come to a close tonight, because there are some legal requirements that don't allow us to go beyond a certain date unless the applicant expressly requests it, we are going to limit the remarks to 2 minutes, and I have asked Commissioner John May to keep track of the time when you come up to speak, and I'm going to try to hold us to that request. You've all been very courteous, and I commend you for it. I'm sure a lot of you have been here before. It is important to the proceedings that everybody maintain the decorum they've always maintained. I have allowed people to speak, as you know, and I will continue to allow them to speak, but I just don't think it's necessary to expend more than 2 minutes on each speaker. That's one point. The other point is, once the applicant has made its presentation through its witnesses, I am going to allow the commissioners to ask questions of each individual witness as that witness speaks. or concludes speaking, that's more accurately said, so that we have a continuity and a flow of information within the commission, which at the end of the day needs to make an informed decision at some point. So with your understanding, which I hope you exhibit by not voicing any displeasure, I will proceed in that fashion. So having said that, is the applicant prepared to make additional remarks or submit additional testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. We also are trying to make our presentation as efficiently as we can. And so what our plan tonight is that I'm going to do a lot of the talking, but I have with me quite a team that can answer the specific questions that I think you will have of them. The team that is here tonight is Dylan Remley, who is the Deputy General Counsel of Global Companies, Jamie Cook, who is the Director of Construction, Nicholas Crescenti, who is an engineer with SFC, who specializes in fire safety issues. Doug Fountain was here last time, and I believe is here this time too, actually. Nick and Doug work for the same company. Adam Lamartier, who is the Health and Safety Manager at Global Companies, and David Wendt, who's the Environmental Compliance Manager for Global. So as I said, our intention is to, for me to run through a lot of answers to the questions that you have asked. And then if you have additional questions for these people, we'll call upon them according to their expertise. You have a few things that I distributed this evening, and I apologize for giving you things so late, but I was receiving information from the opponents up until about noon today and needed to respond to some things. So to answer questions that were raised at the last public hearing, the distance from the tanks to the rail line is about 180 feet. Noise from rail cars was a question. As you know, rail service is controlled by the rail company. Global does not believe that the noise will differ from that when Bostitch operated here. In fact, there will probably be fewer rail deliveries for Global than there were for Bostitch. Town planner Guskowski states in his memo of May 28th that truck and train noise will be buffered by distance, buildings, and extensive vegetation surrounding the site. Traffic impact, and if I'm going too quickly and you'd like to stop, just tell me. Traffic impact, you have two traffic reports. You have one from Global's consultant, Vanessa Associates, and you have a review done for the town by James Rivera, dated July 28th. Both of them find that there are really no problems from traffic expected as to the site. The only issue, which is raised by both of them, is the tight turn from Knollwood Drive going right onto Route 1. The property on that corner is owned by the estate of Stephen Hutt. Attorney Earl Temkin is the executor of that estate. I have spoken with Attorney Temkin and with First Selectman Fritz, and they have, this is going to get awkward juggling papers. They have both authorized me to tell you tonight that if the application is approved, the town and the property owner will work together and solve that turning radius issue. Tax projection. As you know, you will not be deciding this application based on tax revenue from the business. But much of what you've heard about it is not correct. Global's investment at the site is expected to be $7.5 million. Clinton's tax office was reluctant to give us a tax estimate based on only a projection of investment. So our estimate of $100,000 a year over and above what is currently being paid at the site, which I believe is about $35,000, is nothing more than a very, very rough estimate. The tax revenue from the site when developed will almost certainly be higher in that $135,000 figure. The estimate you see from Mr. Pekar dated July 30th are based on an investment of $2 million, which is roughly 25% of what the actual investment will be. Property values. We have stated before that it's virtually impossible to determine the effect of any one factor on property value, and we continue to believe that. Early in this application, I asked two very well-respected appraisers in Connecticut if they could prepare a report about the possible impact of this development on property values, and both of them refused, saying that it really could not be done in any way that would produce valid, reliable information. This is not a case of us refusing to answer the question. It's a case of us saying that it's very difficult to isolate one particular item and the effect that that item has on property value. Nor was it a refusal to pay for an appraisal, as was suggested by a member of the Hammonasset Environmental Trust. We did attempt to get this information from two different appraisers, and they both said it was impossible. But we have given you some evidence from another propane site, from the Albany site, that shows no change in property assessments near the Albany facility during its construction and operation. I'll have more about that in a minute. You have two reports from Heather Clinton, one of which was just received today. I believe if Ms. Clinton is going to speak, I may need to reserve the right to cross-examine her about her work. But we'll give you a few things to think about as you review her information. Ms. Clinton is not an appraiser. One can question whether the opinions that she has included in her reports are part of her expertise, and whether the company for which she works authorized or is aware of the preparation of the reports, since its name does not appear in them. She considered several different kinds of facilities of different sizes. Those facilities are so different from what is proposed for Clinton that it's not a valid comparison. For much of her work, Ms. Clinton offers comparisons of properties, but she did not control for possible differences in the properties. Were the houses that she is using for comparison purposes in the same condition? When were they built? Were they there before the fuel facility that she is concentrating on was built, or were they built after that facility was built? What about the size of the yards? Are there pools? Are they in comparable school districts? Is the maintenance on the properties the same? Does she control for the dramatic effects of the Great Recession or other abutting facilities? As you will know, if you have dealt with appraisals of properties, there are a great many variables that have to be controlled for, and that was not done. She includes traffic information, but the two traffic engineers and the town planner have all found that traffic here will not be a problem. She apparently ignored the operations at the prior Bostitch facility on the property and any effect that it might have had. She states the major characteristics of Windermere are the serene salt marshes and the water views. Nothing Global proposes to do with this property will interfere with either of those things, and in fact, the way Global proposes to develop the property will conserve both of those things. She compares the Clinton facility to those that are open all day, every day. As you know, Clinton will have limited hours, only 5 days a week. She states that the residential properties that she believes are imperiled by this application are 500 to 600 feet from the site, but they are actually 1,180 feet from the tanks and on the far side of an existing building. Just as residents cannot now see the large propane tank on the property, it is very unlikely that any resident will see the proposed tanks, which will be on the other side of an existing building. She suggests that she was paid to prepare the reports, but does not reveal the source of that payment. the second of the reports, the one that was received today, there are some glaring errors in it that also make it unreliable. To point out just a few, the Albany facility, that is Global's other propane facility, is in the port of Albany. Global purchased an existing fuel facility there from ExxonMobil years ago. It is that facility that receives shipments in train lines of 100 or more, not the propane facility. Clearly, that kind of operation bears no relationship to what would happen in Clinton. The Port of Albany is a large industrial area consisting of more than 250 acres, where 31 other companies are located. Among them is one of the largest grain elevators in the country. The Port of Albany has existed for decades. The crude oil business there preceded the propane business by many, many years, the propane facility being much more recent. The terminal where Ms. Clinton experienced burning eyes is not a propane facility. It is a fuel oil facility. The only time there would be a smell at a propane facility is if there is a leak, and that odor is actually added to the product as a safety factor. The facility where she photographed smoking, evidence of smoking, note that the smoking facility is outside the fence where smoking is allowed at that facility. The facility personnel who could not be reached by telephone are seldom in the office where the landline is. All emergency agencies have mobile phone numbers to reach these people in case of an emergency. The leaning power line is not on global property. Based on the photograph, it appears to be on New York Department of Transportation property. The sales information from Ms. Clinton from the Albany site shows just how imprecise and confusing it is to try and isolate property value to one factor. That there were sales of residential properties in an old industrial area, particularly when those sales happened in the aftermath of the Great Recession, and those sales prices were lower than in the past, should surprise no one. Information on pages 1 and 2 of Ms. Clinton's second report reveal this confusion when sales prices and assessments do not match up, particularly for sales that took place between the very crucial and confusing years of 2008 to 2011. Note that the Albany terminal is huge and includes much more than just a propane facility. It is very visible and very busy because it includes businesses that deal with large volumes of crude oil as well as unrelated businesses. In Ms. Clinton's comparison chart on page 3 of her report, the only other propane facility there is Albany. No meaningful comparison between Clinton and Albany can be drawn. Ms. Clinton's work confirms that residential properties near industrial sites have a generally lower value than similar properties not near industrial sites. The sites in Clinton already exhibit this, having, according to Ms. Clinton, an average value about 8% lower than comparable homes elsewhere in Clinton. These homes were built after the bow stitch and other property in the area were zoned and used for industrial purposes. It is an industrial purpose proposed for the site now. No reliable information has been presented that establishes that the proposed use of the site will further devalue homes more than 1,000 feet from the tanks in question. Global's 10K report. I imagine you were surprised to get 231 pages of Global's 10K report. 10Ks are for the information of investors in a business. Any fact or circumstance that could pose a risk to the company's financial condition must be included in the report without mitigating language of any kind. Sarbanes-Oxley and 9/11 have significantly increased the obligations for this reporting. As a company that deals with all kinds of fuels, Global has to describe a worst-case potential situation. The same disclosures are made by the large companies that own every gas station in Clinton. Clearly, 10Ks discuss risks, but not safety features, because no mitigating information may be included. They only show one side of the situation. It would be a distortion of the intent of the 10K report to equate it with a company's safety record. Environmental issues. To quote the Department of Energy, the Federal Department of Energy, propane is, I quote, non-toxic and presents no threat to soil, surface water, or groundwater, close quote. We have distributed one page that you just received tonight from the Department of Energy with that information. David Wendt, Global's Environmental Compliance Manager, is here if you have other questions about that. Questions about catastrophes. Doug Fountain, who was here at the last public hearing, prepared a memo to answer a lot of the questions that were asked at the last public hearing. Issues such as train derailments, aircraft collisions, firearm damage, and tank ruptures and fires. You have that memo tonight. You have a two-page memo from SFC Engineering. The primary message of the memo is that these occurrences are very unlikely. But even if they were to occur, redundant safety technology is built into the entire system that would hold damage and risk to a minimum. Nicholas Crescenti of FFC is here tonight if you have questions about the information in that memo. A note about Mr. Fountain. Attorney Ainsworth states that Mr. Fountain, who spoke to you last night and wrote the memo, is not a professional engineer in Connecticut. That's true. Mr. Fountain has a degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Melbourne in Australia. Please note that the Hammonasset Trust expert, Mr. Lewandowski, is also not a professional engineer in any place and has no college degree at all. Chemical facility anti-terrorism standards. I believe this question actually came from a member of the public last time. These standards have the unfortunate acronym of CFATS. The requirements come through the Department of Homeland Security, and the Clinton facility will be subject to them. Because the facility will store a, quote, chemical of interest, close quote, above the screening threshold quantity, Clinton will have what is called a top screen submission requirement. The Albany facility is subject to these requirements also. They submitted the information for the Albany facility and were told by the Department of Homeland Security that it does not consider that facility a high-risk chemical facility. There were actually quite a few questions at the last hearing about terrorism threats and risks. Since the Albany facility is much larger than Clinton will be, it is likely that the same determination will be made about the Clinton facility, showing that DHS does not consider the facility a terrorist risk. Adam Lamartier, Global's Health and Safety Manager, is here if you have questions about these requirements. That concludes our very fast run-through of a lot of the questions that were asked last time. But if you would like to follow up on any of those with the team that is here, we certainly invite you to do that.
You were reading from a written document, Attorney Whitman. Would you mind submitting that into the record? Okay. If you would just hand it to the clerk. Okay. When are you planning to do that? All right. Fine. Thank you. Commissioners, questions of Attorney Whitney, or do we wait for the experts? It's up to you.
With the rail lines, do you have increase it by having this facility here. You-
I don't know that.
I don't know the other customers that are on that rail line, so the answer is I don't know what additional increase, if any, it would, in terms of propane moving on the rail lines that already go through town. There could be other customers down the line that are unaffiliated or unassociated. There may be other customers down the line, unassociated or unaffiliated with Global. We would have no knowledge of the volumes or the frequency of the rail car movement. Well,
Attorney Whitney, the engineer who prepared the report on the various hypothetical questions that I posed and other members posed, is that Doug Fountain?
Yes, and he is here, and Nicholas Crescendi, his boss, is also here.
Okay. I'm scanning through the report now. I hadn't seen it before, and I may have some questions that I would defer to a later point. Anyone else on the commission with questions of Attorney Whitney at this point? Okay. Is there any other presentation you intend to make? If not, I am going to open it up to the audience.
I only reserve right to rebut after.
Very well. Okay. As you heard me say earlier, 2 minutes each. I am going to ask anyone that is in favor of the application to come forth and express whatever sentiments he or she may have. Anyone in favor? Anyone in favor? Okay, let's go the other way. Anyone opposed to the application?
Yes.
Please go to the table on my right, to your left, and sign up, and we will proceed with all deliberate speed.
If I can get through there without getting stumped.
By the way, you're going to be called in the order that you sign up.
Willie. Yeah, where the hell is he again tonight? He won't show up. We don't have any air on it. We got 2 minutes.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Doris Grava, and I live William Street, which is not far from where the proposed facility would be. And the representative from Global said we would not be able to see the tanks. I say to that, whoopee-doo. Denial does not make any difference whatsoever. When I hear there's 580,000 gallons of propane in my neighborhood, I say, no, this is not okay. It is not going to happen as long as I am a resident of Clinton. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Gail Garrity, and I'm a licensed real estate broker who resides in Clinton. And I have a letter for you that I would like to present tonight for your consideration to the zoning. To the members of the Clinton Planning and Zoning Commission. I have been a realtor over 4 decades and understand property values and the impact adverse conditions can create on home values. The installation of a 540,000 gallon gas storage facility in Clinton will definitely impact the values negatively. The town has stated that the expected tax revenue from the facility would be $130,000 plus. The negative effect on surrounding property values would result in lower assessments, reduced taxes on residential properties, as well as commercial properties, thus eventually taking away the current tax base on these homes, resulting in a lower tax base in Clinton. What would that solve? The proposed risk, if any explosion or accident occurred, would scare off new construction and potential buyers, as well as lower sellers' asking prices. It is my professional opinion that demand for Clinton properties and eventual sale prices will decline. If Clinton is trying to increase their tax base, why not attract new buyers to the town with the new construction of new homes that would aid our tax revenue in a positive way and exceed the 130 plus revenue from the propane storage facility. Westbrook, by the way, take a look at Westbrook. Westbrook is doing just this with new construction. Allowing this propane facility would have a negative impact on buyers and sellers in Clinton. Buyers would not be likely to choose Clinton as a town of choice. Why would they invest in a town that has a potential risk of safety? For the recent turnout at the last few meetings to fight for our shoreline town and surrounding areas, that should show you the unwanted use of this land is not accepted by our residents. Remember, perception is reality. Let the reality be that Clinton cares about the safety of its residents and the value of their homes. I urge you to seriously consider the long-term consequences. Respectfully, Gail Garrity.
Mary from John Street. And after that, Lori Eady.
Hi, I'm Mary Buffalo from John Street. And I went on today to Google Earth so that I could try to get that view down, looking down on this development and all that it promises. And it certainly gives you the view of all the salt marshes, the lake, the river that runs through, the amount of housing that is there, and that I think will be coming there, because that area across from Jog Lot and all the way down on Route 1 has been picking up over the last 5 years, 6 years, with more and more very high, sort of high-end, nice stores that are going in place, all of which look like they'd be quite threatened, not obviously threatened because you wouldn't see it, but threatened because we would all know it was there. There's no reason not to build a propane facility somewhere, but not in the middle of a residential area or an area that is coming up and has the potential to become more residential and become more business friendly. There was one other thing. Oh, I heat one of my buildings, my studio, with propane. Last year, propane went for $3.59, higher than oil. There's lots of research going on now with some of the new technology, the ductless systems that are going through, where they take it on with electricity and then it takes the same amount that it runs an ice box. There's no way that we're going to know over the next 10 years whether the technology is going to kick forward to find ways to solve some of these problems that we are all going to have to look at: oil, propane, some of these other things. So for us to put this amount of energy into doing something that is so unpopular strikes me, especially when we don't know what's going to happen. My 2 minutes up? Almost. So we don't know that what's going to happen. Strikes me as not thinking it through sort of for the long term. And I think that the feeling in this room is that everybody really, really wants us to think it through for the long term. Thank you.
P11 Hideaway. I'm against this proposal. Very basic facts. It is going to affect the property value of the local homeowners. There's no doubt. I want to buy a house next to a propane distribution facility. It is also near a lot of homes. These are homes with families and children and elderly people. It affects my mother-in-law. It affects my friends. and it doesn't belong there. It is not a large industrial site, as has been implied. It's a neighborhood. It's homes. Thank you.
I'm Jane Lewis, and I'm from Madison, not in Windermere, but I have a farm and my home right across the river from this facility. And I know when Bostic was in, they told us that what was going into the river wasn't affecting us. Well, that was not so. And I'm very concerned about this, and hope very, very much that you listen to the people. We really need an ear for that. Thank you.
After Katie McCollum is Tom Destino.
Katie McCollum, 15 Knollwood Drive, closest residence on Knollwood Drive to this facility, but I don't rise alone. I don't rise by myself. I rise with all the Clinton residents on Knollwood Drive. Can you please stand if you live on Knollwood Drive? We are small, but we are mighty, and we are here. I drafted a letter on behalf of our entire neighborhood. Our neighborhood consists of older retirees, residents, young families, and commercial properties, but we are all concerned about how this will negatively impact both our property value, safety, and quality of life. Our concerns are numerous. It clearly states in our special exceptions that the location, type, character, and size of this property must be in harmony with and conform to, and not impair the value of the surrounding or adjacent property, that is our homes. This proposal seems to clearly defy your regulation. The plan for the current property to expand from 30,000 gallons of an on-site tank for manufacturing purposes only to a series of 12 tanks totaling 540,000 gallons for constant distribution is inconceivable. While the property was used for manufacturing, it did not endanger the residents of my street. The present tank was filled infrequently on site and could be filled with one train car, not 18, and it was not transported off property. Employees entering did so in small vehicles. The few trucks that entered or left did so early in the morning or in the late afternoon and did not carry hazardous chemicals. The proposed bulk distribution facility will increase traffic on our small road where our children play and businesses are frequented by young children every 6 to 12 minutes, up to 40 tanker trucks per day, not small distribution tanks. It will increase traffic and noise pollution. One thing is apparently clear. This facility will reduce interest in and value of our real estate. Fewer commercial businesses would be interested in populating the abandoned properties on our road. Families would be deterred from purchasing our homes, and existing families will look elsewhere. As a community interested in growing and developing, this facility will do nothing for our reputation. Obviously, we are interested in developing. This property could be cleaned up. This property could be developed, but let's hold Bostic accountable. It also came to our understanding that Bostic continues to pay $80,000 in taxes, correct me if I'm wrong, but the net increase would only be $20,000 for all of this trouble. The presence of Bostic was not noisy, did not detract from our homes. Even in summer months now, we can hear traffic in local businesses. But if this were to occur, our families would be subjected to train cars throughout the middle of the night. This is not a business hour facility. This does not take into consideration construction that will happen as this is built, and noise is perhaps the least of our worries. The level of safety precautions, evacuation procedures, and fire resources necessary to keep our families feeling safe is simply not possible. Distribution facilities will lie within yards of our homes, and while our firemen will never say so themselves, we know this is not in the realm of their training. Such a disaster has overwhelmed even the most trained and professional fire departments around our country. If this facility were to be breached or endangered, our small community would strip resources and personnel from all surrounding towns, and it is not fair to them. Our firefighters are trained on small gas grill tanks, not 45,000 gallon tanks. This is a center, not just a 540,000 gallon storage facility, but it will include 30,000 gallon rail cars, multiple cars, and 10,000 gallon tanks. We as a neighborhood would be completely leveled if this were to occur. And while the experts have stated this is unlikely and rare, it's possible. And possible is too probable for our families to accept. Our concern is not for Knollwood alone, but for the greater impact of the entire town as this would have to displace families and businesses for over a mile. In researching this for your meeting, we came across your regulations. And I've blown them up here for all of you to see. 1.4, the purpose of planning and zoning. And I've just underlined a few of the key points. To promote the health and safety, general welfare of our community, to conserve the value of property, to lessen congestion in our streets, to secure safety from fire, to provide for public health, comfort, and general welfare in living conditions, to restrict location and time of operation of trades and industries, and to improve the physical appearance and character of our town. It is also our stance that this proposal does not match the purpose of the planning and zoning regulations nor your special exception. It will not promote health and safety. It will not conserve our property values. It will not be an appropriate use of this land. It will not lessen congestion. It will not secure safety from fire, but rather increase the possibility of a mass disaster. It will not improve the physical appearance or the character of our town. In fact, it will harm our character, reduce interest by young families and retirees, harm our commercial businesses, reduce visitors and tourists, and finally, we, the residents of Noah Drive, implore you to follow your own regulations and your special exception and deny this proposal. I read a slogan the other day that said a small town is like a big family. Well, as part of this big family, we thank you for your service to us because you are part of us, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak against this motion.
I really have to ask to conduct yourselves in a way that is courteous. I understand the emotions. You know, I live in Clinton too. I've lived here for 27 years. But we have to abide by certain standards. I asked for a 2-minute presentation. I think I got probably a 6-minute presentation. But I don't mind. I don't mind. But when we decide to applaud and it continues, it really does create a different situation than what we're supposed to be having. This is a hearing. You heard me say it's like being in a courtroom. You don't do this in a courtroom. The judge wouldn't stand for it, and people would be upset, and the fairness of the proceedings will be jeopardized. The last thing you want to do is to jeopardize the proceedings, because the one thing we want to do is make a decision that maintains the propriety. You heard our attorney speak at the outset. There's a reason for that. And the reason is when litigation ensues because somebody feels that they were not given a fair shake, the odds of winning or losing are not exactly balanced. So when I'm trying to keep the decorum and courtesy and let people speak, I'm also trying to keep a fair and impartial framework until the decision is made. So I hope you appreciate that. I've said it before, I've just said it again. I think the commissioners expect that sort of environment. I'm trying to provide it as their chairman. And now to the next speaker that I would ask to just speak for 2 minutes.
After Mr. Vecino, it's Bruce Farmer.
Thank you, and the person before me did a very nice job. Did a good job. I'll make it quick and tell me when I'm ready to go. What my concerns are, we've talked about the area directly, but my concerns are the whole area in general. We know we live in an area that is very susceptible to sea level. We know we have congestion here. Anybody that lives around here knows what Route 1 is like during the summer. I don't know when the company did their study, but come down here on the weekends or in the heart of the summer and you can't get anywhere. It's just gridlock, bumper to bumper. In the last 5 years, we've had several storms in the area, a lot bigger than the last 20 years. Taking out I-95 in 3 sections in the state where we couldn't get equipment through, it was closed down. Our rail was closed down for the first time along the Connecticut shoreline. These were bunkers built to protect the rest of the area from the high sea level. When our shoreline was built, it was built at an 8 to 10 foot storm surge. Now our storm surge in the last storms is between 11 and 13 feet. When the rail goes down and 95 goes down, it will be very impossible to move a lot of this equipment that we had issues with 3 years ago when the road was completely covered for a solid week. The equipment was broke to plow. We couldn't move any equipment around. These are all things to take in consideration on safety. 2 years ago, during that last storm, it affected our area for up to 2 weeks as far as getting everything dug out and get everything safe again. And this is a big issue when we're talking about a catastrophe or moving out of the area. We're in complete gridlock. As far as the property tax issue, the new figures that have been obtained tonight are still very low. We look at our high costs of our roads, police, fire, DPW. We spend a lot on that, and the area is just too small, and it will make our costs go up. As far as the property tax issues goes, tonight the designated speaker for the group mentioned that they talked to an expert to do a study. The study was not completed. It's very rare that I've been to one of these meetings where the applicant did not hire a specialist to bring across figures for the project. This tells me that any expert or professional would tell you that this project is going to affect all of our areas as far as property value. This is the Connecticut shoreline. This area is known for its vacation, boating, fishing, shopping, retirement areas. We have new sports fields over at Hammonasset. This area is the Connecticut shoreline. Please leave it there. Thank you.
Lauren Santos is after Mr. Farmer.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bruce Farmer. I live in 1 Liberty Village. Since the last meeting, I got pretty curious about this whole facility, the tank trucks on the roads, the rail cars also carrying tanks. So I wanted to find a little information on my own. So I contacted the U.S. Department of Energy, the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and the National Fire Protection Agency. And let me tell you, if these folks stand here tonight from Global tell you there's no risk, I just can't accept that. Because I've read the risk assessment studies for the Department of Energy. I've read the hazmat data that was supplied to me. You know, the risks are real here for fire and explosion, from accidents or terrorism. And while Homeland Security may not think we're a big risk area, fine, but it only takes one nut to cause a major catastrophe. I mean, no matter what the folks at Global or any other facility owners do or say, the risk of fire explosion is real at the facility, on the roads, on the rails. We know every company employs required safety measures. Again, I say they're required safety measures, but the risks are still there. Again, I contacted the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and I asked them about a scenario whereby the Hammonasset connector was closed, either long-term or short-term, because of an event that happened there. I said nothing about Global or Propane, but I said, let me know where trucks can safely go, triaxle tank trucks going to and from Knollwood. How would they safely get back to Ina? And still working. And so they had to call me back with the information. So I waited about a half an hour, and sure enough, they called me back. And they said, assuming
that the Post Road, Route 1, and the connector were not blocked. That trucks going to and from Knollwood would either have to go west on Route 1, Post Road, all the way to Route 79 in Madison, or go east all the way to Route 145. Because they can't go Post Road to Route 81, they'll go right into the railroad bridge. They can't go up Liberty Street because at the top of Liberty Street, it's too hard to make a turn on Glenwood. Long story short, now your exposure area for risk of fire and explosion goes from what was, 500 or 1,000 feet to an excess of 3 miles in each direction. Now you've exposed the general public, our school children, people who have their businesses here. It's a big risk area, and I just don't think that we should have to deal with that, whether it's us, the general public, or our firefighters. Bottom line is, with the folks at Global want this in their backyard where they live, I think not.
After Laura Santos will be Nancy Lita.
Hi, Lauren Santos. I'm from Commerce Street in Clinton. And first of all, I want to thank everybody on this commission. You've had a hard go with this. 3 public hearings that have lasted forever and ever. Dreadfully boring, dreadfully tedious, minutia, and lots of information, but very difficult. And you're being asked to decide something fairly and impartially. And but bottom line, you are to go by the zoning laws. And you need to keep in mind what was so eloquently and beautifully put forward by our Knollwood resident. And in mass, these people are standing up for themselves, and they're pointing out to you that your job is to stabilize property values, protect the health and safety of the people in Clinton, and to basically decide things based on traffic congestion and other matters so that people can easily get through town. And it's really, really important that you keep in mind these basic principles that were laid out on the board, because that's really what it's all about. It's to maintain the property values of our people in Clinton and promote health and safety and, the public good. And this is in no way the public good. And don't be dissuaded by the smoke and mirrors of all the science in this, because you can find 50 million different studies on both sides, pointing in different directions. And believe me, the people from our applicant, the studies from our applicant are going to be heavily weighted on one side. So thanks again for I know many of you, and I know you're really smart, and you're going to come up with the right decision for the town.
After Nancy will be Alan Parcellis from Madison.
My name is Nancy Lita, and I spoke at the first meeting, and I got emotional. And I may get emotional again because it is personal to me. Those trucks to me as close as that man to me, to speak for you, the one-town microphone is. You're having your hamburgers and hot dogs, and your grandkids are over, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm gonna have every 6 to 12 minutes, boom, these huge trucks coming right at me. So it's really horrible for the quality of our life on Knollwood. And I feel like Katie is Clinton's answer to It's a Wonderful Life. you know, the movie where it's like, you know, I'm so proud of everyone here for turning out and, you know, coming against this. Want to be proud of you guys, because when I moved here, I thought, everyone here is so charming, and it's such a charming town. Putting this, it wouldn't be so charming. My husband and I went to a baseball game in Norwich, and there was a propane facility up there. That's a half an hour away. If there's need for propane, it can come from there. That's an industrial type facility. So I implore you, as a grandma and mom, you know, think about us when you're cooking your burgers, that we're gonna have these trucks coming by our house.
After Alan is Ron Bodenson.
Good evening. My name is Alan Parcells. I'm from Madison, Connecticut, and I really have questions for the PZC board. I am opposed to this application, but I wanted to read something. After listening to the concerns of residents and so-called safety expert testimony from Global and their legal counsel, I hope that the P&Z board makes the correct decision to deny this application. Based upon the inputs from tax-paying residents of Clinton, over the past two meetings, we have heard from two who were in favor of the proposal and numerous residents from Clinton and Madison who have voiced their opposition to this proposal because of fear of their family and personal safety. If the board is forced by political or personal pressure to allow this application, I would hope that they could find ways to put some restrictions on the size of and operation of the site. We heard from two safety experts who said that if there was a leak at the site, it would just be a matter of someone to push a button to shut down the leak. There is no proposed 24/7 on-site coverage. Why can't the P&Z board require such coverage? Why is there only one entrance and exit? Shouldn't there be another emergency exit in the plans? How do emergency personnel enter Norwood Drive if it's blocked? If the board approves this application, can they put restrictions on the size of the facility to a lesser amount? You know, I read something in the paper the other day that Guilford is toying with this now about putting restrictions on the size of propane facilities. Did I talk too loud? Can the board request that Global fix Norwood Drive and the intersection at Route 1 by widening the road and intersection to allow trucks to pass and turn? Does the fire department have plans in place that require on-site emergency procedures, and are there drills performed periodically to review the procedures in place? Has there been an evacuation plan developed for both Clinton and Madison? You know, you talk about evacuation. I live in Madison. We got evacuated a couple years ago because of the hurricane. If there was a propane accident, it's too late to have an evacuation plan. It's, you know, there's no planned leak. It's a leak, so it would have to be an emergency type of thing. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
After Mr. Bodenson is Linda Bauer.
Good evening, Ron Bodenson. Thanks for your attention. My impression, and I don't know if you have the same one, is that if you grant this permit to Global, they have no intention to allow you to continue to regulate or control them in the future. I give you two examples of that, and the first one's even more alarming than the second, but you've already gotten a letter from the railroad that if they supply Global, you cannot control their timing, the number of cars, the lighting, the noise, and your council has confirmed federal law that the city will have no control over anything to do with the railroads. Now, as I understand it, a submission this week by Global is that they're suggesting you don't have any control over them once you grant the permit either, because they seem to be piggybacking on the railroad. And if I read the statement correctly, they're now challenging whether you can control their days or hours. They already don't like some of your fencing requirements. So you're going to have your hands full if you grant this permit. It could be just a long nightmare of litigation to just enforce the simplest regulations you have when they claim they don't apply to us. That's the impression I've had. And to further it tonight, you have their engineer and your traffic engineer saying Norwood Drive and Route 1 cannot handle these vehicles. They're too big. They cannot make a safe right turn. They go into the oncoming lane. And what's global solution? This is not the solution given by either engineer, is, hey, we've talked to the landowner and we're gonna reach an agreement with them. Just trust us, we'll work it out. We'll handle the traffic safety and engineering in Clinton by just working it out with the mediation apparently of the first selectman. We don't know his involvement in that. But is that how that's what he said. The first selectman is going to mediate a deal with the adjoining landowner. Now imagine if the deal is we'll just give them a 50-foot right-of-way diagonally across our property that exits in front of McDonald's, then they don't have any right turn problems. They just buy for $100,000 an easement and make a right turn and no lights. So seriously, if the commission grants this permit, one, I think you're gonna have a problem enforcing anything with them without a fight. But secondly, it must be conditioned on Norwood and Route 1 being traffic engineered by professionals and not some side deal with the landowner and the first selectman to solve the problem. That's not what it is.
After Linda Bauer is John Savannah.
Yeah, Willie is an engineer, just asking.
Hi, my name is Linda Bauer. My husband and I we live in Killingworth, but we've been involved with the town for approximately 40 years. My husband ran Schnitzel Brothers for 41 years and was in the Clinton Rotary for 30 years and raised a lot of money for this town. We own a piece of property directly across from Windermere. It's absolutely beautiful. It goes along the Hammonasset River. And for the past 2 years, I've been talking to different people about developing that with over low-income housing, over 55 housing, some kind of complex similar to Windermere. The attorney for Global, Ms. Whitney, had all kinds of things that said she didn't know how that it would impact property values. Well, I think a lot of you might know Michael J. Milano. He's one of the biggest developers along the shoreline. I spoke to him recently. He didn't even want to talk to me because he said, well, maybe if they don't put in that facility, I'll talk to you. If that isn't a direct devaluation of property, I don't know what is. They don't even want to touch it or talk to me. And as the real estate lady said, Ms. Garrity, it definitely will devalue all the property, which will have to reduce all the assessments, which will have to reduce the taxes. So what have you gained?
Good luck.
Nothing. Okay. The other thing is my dad owned a building on John Street Extension, backed right up to the railroad. It was an industrial building. He owned it for many years. And I don't know if any of you remember this, but as I said, we've been involved with this town for 30 to 40 years. But I think it was about 20 years ago, a train derailed right behind my father's building.
Yep.
And there was a car hanging off the bridge, the railroad bridge, right over the entrance into Clinton. And we're not talking about the safety at the site. We're talking about human error and train error. Now, if that car was filled with gas, I can't even imagine what would have happened. But I remember seeing that hanging off the bridge. I don't know how many of the rest of you remember that.
We just finishing the construction on downtown. Yep.
After Mr. Savannah is Michael Galloway.
Yes, I'm John Savanik. My wife and I have We've been down here for 45 years at 11 Neck Road. We are less than 1 mile away from the proposed site, well within the blast area. I do concur with all of the already shared points raised by so many others who are in opposition to this proposed site. What I'd like to focus on very briefly is an article that appeared in the Harvard News on January 24, entitled "No Vote for Town Hall Cell Tower." That evidently there was an application that was given to you by AT&T to put a cell tower on this building. I don't know how a special town meeting ended up having to decide that issue, but there was a special town meeting rather than just a decision by the planning and zoning. At that meeting, there were 70 people, not hundreds, 70. 23 voted yes, 47 no. So it was defeated. There was a very interesting quote given in the article, given by our first selectman, Willie Fritz. He says, and I quote, "This is how our government works in town. We take these matters to the residents, and we have to respect how they vote in regard to these kinds of issues," unquote. I implore you to have that kind of sentiment in town. We have not had a paper ballot, but basically, if my figures are correct, there have been 2 yes votes so far. There have been hundreds of no votes. I don't know if it's appropriate for this issue to also go to a special town meeting or some sort of vote by the entire town. But when I read that a special town meeting was held for a proposed tower on a building, and here we are with an issue that I feel is dangerous. Not only maybe we don't want to see it on a building, see something on a historic building. I ask you to take our selectmen's words to heart. Thank you.
Before we go any further, I just want to make a statement to clarify what our role is as a planning and zoning commission. This is not a matter that's taken up by a vote of the townspeople. You may think that to be unfortunate, and perhaps when we are subjected to a constant, repetitive disapproval of an application, we too may think that would have been a nice idea. But the problem is this. We're talking about apples and oranges here. If we were to take to a town vote every single application for land use that comes before the Planning and Zoning Commission, before too long, planning and zoning wouldn't exist. There would be absolutely no planning. There would be absolutely no zoning. And we go back to the wild, wild west where people did whatever they wanted to do, whenever they wanted to do it. So in their infinite wisdom, the legislature saw fit to create a set of laws that allow you folks to vote for us folks to sit as a planning and zoning commission to uphold certain standards. The standards are adopted over a period of time, oftentimes across the years, to address particular needs of the community through its zoning regulations. This is what we're confronting right now. We have zoning regulations in place. We have an applicant that is trying to argue to us that they are conforming to those zoning regulations by submitting certain items of evidence, and we are here to decide whether indeed, or in fact, they have done so. There is no vote that's going to be taken by you residents, because it is not a matter that goes to a town meeting or to a town vote. The gentleman referred to a cell tower issue. That cell tower issue went to a vote because it pertained to a public piece of property, namely this building. It's owned by you. Therefore, you get to decide whether or not, ultimately, it's a good idea or a bad idea. That's known as an 824 application, meaning that we sit and basically say, yes, it's a good idea, but whatever we think, it still goes to town vote. That's not what this is. This is not that at all. So, in order to avoid confusion, we are going to make a decision. Whether you ultimately like it or not like it, I can't say, because I don't know what that decision will be. All I can assure you of is that we, as a commission, are going to be fair and impartial. And I have allowed you all to speak and speak and speak, and I'm hearing essentially the same sentiments over and over again. I think we understand. Some of the concerns you're expressing are concerns that these members have expressed. We do it in the form of questions, and we're trying to get to the point where we are satisfied that answers either favorable or unfavorable have been given. And I do this only on rare occasions. I'm doing it here because this is obviously an incredibly important issue to all of us. And we need to get it right, one way or the other. I can assure you there is no political pressure that I, for one, feel or think that we are being subjected to. And I don't think, I speak for myself only, I don't think any of the members of this commission, of whom I am very proud because of the nature of their service and the nature of the questions, and I see them month after month, sometimes week after week. You can be assured that we will do what we believe is the right thing. Okay? So if you have any more comments to make regarding this application that are new comments, new ideas, that's fine. If we're just going to continue to make the point that you're against it because of safety issues, I'd like to hear something different than what I've heard for the last 2 public hearings. And that's not meant to be disrespectful. It's meant to be so that when a decision is made, it has a reasonable chance of being upheld by a court of law if challenged. Thank you.
Aren't you between a rock and a hard place? Michael Galway, 32 Nodwell, my property is within that 1,100 feet. It's my business, of my wife and mine, and it's our livelihood. The one thing I have not heard through all these meetings is Amtrak. Where are they? I've looked at those tracks. I've looked at that third line that goes from that area all the way down to the ponds. That thing is not in any shape to carry any rail cars on a constant basis, especially ones full of what we're talking about here. I'm not going to split hairs over propane, gas, or anything else, but those tracks are useless. Major construction needs to be done on those. I'd like to know who's going to be responsible for that. Is Global? Is the taxpayers? What's it going to come down to redo all that line? The other thing is, I'm not splitting hairs again with propane or anything else, but I haven't heard the issue of Hartford in 2011 that killed 13 people, and that was just purging lines. I live on the edge of this. I see Amtrak. I fight them every day. I probably have a bounty on my head because they simply won't clean a culvert. Amtrak does not have any healthy record in Connecticut, on the East Coast. If anybody looks up their accident record, it's not good. And everything is human error.
Now, I know Global has tried to downplay the fact of terrorism. I have a 32-unit self-storage facility. The association that runs, not runs, but we can be members of, has an insurance policy that includes terrorism on storage facilities. I have a routine I have to go through for all my customers for terrorism. I gotta make sure with Homeland Security certain things don't happen. I've gotta keep my eyes on it for certain things to keep terrorism at bay. I'm a 32-unit storage building, and I'm dealing with terrorism, and they're downplaying it on a plant of 500,000 plus gallons of propane. New Haven is a prime target, World War I, World War II, all of them. Why wouldn't this be a target? We're coming into bad times. Look at it all over the world. Why are they downplaying terrorism when my little 32-unit storage facility has to offer terrorism insurance? Thank you.
After Jane Nettleton is Joseph Lita.
This is something that is new, I believe. I did hear one comment that intersection, oh, she gave my name. I thought that was enough. Very sorry. I'm Jane Nettleton, live on Waterside Lane, and have for 37 years. Now back to what I was thinking of originally. I was told, we heard tonight, that intersection is no problem. If anyone has traveled west in that area in the late afternoon, that sun, which just sets over the sound, which is wonderful, but it strikes everyone like a blast. Woo, you cannot see. There are no trees there, there are no hills there. That it is all flat and the sun hits everyone in the eyes, in the face. Last fall, I was turning into McDonald's, the way a lot of people do, and I said to my husband, I cannot see. So I crept forward, and when I decided it was safe, I turned, and I was going west, I turned into McDonald's. A car right after me went to turn into McDonald's. Guess what? They couldn't see either, and they hit a bicyclist. He was one of these properly dressed, helmet on. His bicycle was destroyed. He just fell off. He was not badly hurt. And he said, I have lights on my bicycle. Well, they did not compete with the sun. I had already parked at McDonald's, and I said to my husband, the police were already there. I'm going to go over and stand up for the driver and say, the driver's completely blind. We could not see. We were going slowly, doing the best we could. A few seconds later, I would have hit the cyclist. The policeman was rattled. He said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm here to help because I saw what happened to that driver, and I've been in the same position seconds earlier where I could not see. The policeman said, look, lady, get out of my way. I'm interviewing this driver. Go stand over there. So I said to my husband, well, he's very nice. And I said, let's go in and have a burger in McDonald's instead of stand over here. I was kind of fuming at that point. Later, I did go out. The policeman was still there, and I talked to him, and he said, oh, I'm sorry. I said, I told you I had something important to say. I think it's very important at this point. I'm sure everyone in this room has gone west
in the afternoon when that sun hits you in the face and you can't see. Those trucks turning out of there, even if they're given a better way to turn, that sun is going to be in their face as well. I don't think anyone should say that that is not hazardous area. I was at McDonald's yesterday taking a hamburger to my husband in the hospital, and there were over 15 out-of-state cars in McDonald's parking lot. That's a very congested area. Thank you.
After Joseph Lita is Heather Clinton.
My name is Reverend Joseph Lita, 5 Norwood Drive. At the first meeting, my wife shared that we bought our house in October. We invested a lot of money in our house. We've made home improvements, and we are very concerned about the property values going down. I've been talking to the building department and the zoning to build this and build that, and you have to be so many feet away from this and so many feet away from that, and we've complied with all these things. And the one thing I noticed was that Nancy and I drive up and down the street every day. We see kids in the road, and when kids get off the bus, I haven't seen one bus come down Norwood Drive. They must get dropped off on Route 1 because obviously they talk about getting in and out of the road, which is very difficult. So I know I had an excavator. He had to pull in the job lot and turn around so then he could come straight through. So that's one thing. And I also wanted to say that about 12 years ago, I was trained on filling propane tanks, okay? So I was a manager of a convenience store. So the guy came, he said, do this, do that. It was about a minute. Fill the tank in a minute or two, whatever it was. And then he goes, okay, you train your staff, bye. So another concern of mine is, you know, we have great firemen, I'm sure, and they're trained, but, you know, sometimes training is lackadaisical, and it concerns me, especially with something of that magnitude. So, you know, we're totally against this. And another thing I want to say is that, you know, there might be some people here that are too apprehensive to come up here. So, if anybody doesn't want to come up here and you do oppose this, would you just stand for a minute? So, Commission, I would like to just thank you for the opportunity, and you know, there is a possibility of something happening, and if that one thing were to occur with something happened, I just wouldn't want your conscience to feel that even if one life was taken. Thank you.
After Heather Clinton is Robert McCollum.
My name is Heather Clinton. I'm a realtor. I was not paid to do these evaluations. As you know, as real estate agents, when people sign their buyer brokers, they have a fiduciary duty to their clients. My client contacted me after he had heard about the propane facility being put in place, the proposal, and he asked me, is this going to affect my real estate? I said, I don't know. Part of what we know on this part of the state is that, you know, they particular had a year where we had absolutely very few sales. And I'm sure you're all aware of the impact of that. This year, Clinton has started to have an influx of buyers. And part of my background is also that I'm highly educated. I'm a clinical master's in social work from the Smith College School for Social Work. I'm also a fourth generation realtor. I have been driving through the shoreline since I was longer than you. And I think actually you and I have spoken on the phone, because when I called you, the department, I think you were the one I spoke to when I asked what the blast radius was, and you had said they don't need to put that on their application because they're not planning on blowing up. And I think part of what we're hearing here, let me speak please, because part of what you're hearing, I recognize your voice. I do. But what I'm trying to say to you is that part of the issue here is that you're hearing people repeat the same thing over and over and over again because you're not answering their question. You're not telling them what your evacuation plan is. You're not telling them what your plan is. They don't know, and that's why they're still anxious. They don't understand. I represent buyers. Part of what we deal with is not the statistics of what is going to happen. It doesn't matter how small your stats are. What you deal with is perception, buyer's perception. You've all bought a house before, and you have a discretionary amount of income that you want to spend. Are you going to live near a propane tank, or are you going to live near the water? We know that there are certain trends, there are certain facts in real estate that are indisputable. Properties that have water views, properties that are closer to the water, that have beautiful vistas, are more valuable than a house, a real estate property that is near a terminal. Now, I don't know if any of you have visited any of Global's terminals. Have any of you visited any of their terminals? No. On the board, please. Anyone? Have you seen any of them? Have you gone to Albany? No. Okay, I visited most of them myself. Because that's what we do as realtors. We go to the properties. I looked at those homes that I pulled and that I put on those documents. I looked at them. I walked through those areas. I did that research. Why did I do that research? I did it for my client because I have a fiduciary duty to him. I sold him a property, and he asked me, is this going to affect my property? And I said, I don't know. I need to research this for you. Nobody paid me a dime. I am in this business because I care about it. People, when they buy a house, it's probably one of the biggest investments that they make for their lifetime. They are going to be paying for that house. Clinton gets a bad rep. I've lived here my whole life. I've lived here before you lived here. And because you've been here 27 years. Clinton didn't have zoning for a while. That's why your town is a little bit different than Madison and Guilford. Their zoning is much stricter. They did that for a reason, because they didn't want business intermixed with their residences. Now, Clinton has changed over the years. Now they have zoning, and they're really trying to make an effort to improve the town, and they have. Buyers are starting to realize for the first time in a long time, we have people coming from other areas of the state because they can afford to live in Clinton on the shoreline. Hammock Parkway is a treasure. Uncas is a treasure. You have some beach properties that are affordable for people, that they can have beach rights and they can be in a zone X. That means they shouldn't be required to have flood insurance. They have the best of both worlds. And that's what's happening. If you go down those streets, you'll see that people are buying those houses and they're fixing them up. And the face of Clinton is changing. And you're starting to have people realize that there's some real gems here. I can tell you that I'm working with 6 buyers right now that want to buy in Clinton. But I have a fiduciary duty to them. Do you know? When I'm a buyer broker, I have to disclose to them what's going on in Clinton. Because if I don't, and they buy a house, and you vote to put this in, I can be liable. Because it's something that I know. I will tell you my personal experience as a professional realtor and as a lifelong resident of this community, the shoreline community, that you are making a mistake. I have visited all of these terminals. I I have visited a lot of their terminals. And there were safety issues all over the place. And they are a big corporation, and they will answer to no one. And you will be responsible for this, because you have the power to do this. And that's all I have to say.
Hello, my name is Rob McCollum. I live at 15 Norwood Drive. I'm a merchant mariner, and I've been to the global terminals on a regular basis. And I've been to terminals from Mexico to Maine, and putting a terminal of any type in Clinton does not fit with the character of this town. I do not confuse the global only terminal with my backyard. It's just not the same thing. This would not be a good place to put this. I think alternate fuel sources are a great thing, but not in a shoreline community like Clinton. And they keep talking about safety, safety. They also thought the Titanic would never sink, and we all know how that turned out.
After Alex is Virginia Woods.
Hi, I'm Alex Wetmore, part of Hammonasset Environmental Trust, and I'd like to invite Diane Whitney to talk to me directly. Is that allowed? Okay. Diane, I just want to make sure I have my facts straight. We have been told that there will be 3 to 5 employees on site. Is that correct? I would like you to answer me then. Yeah.
Under the law, she's entitled, anybody's entitled to cross-examine anyone that has testified in this sense. And you've made certain representations, I think she can ask you questions, unless you want one of the experts to answer the questions, you feel that's a better way to respond.
Or just go back to Massachusetts.
That's correct. Okay, 3 to 5 employees will be on site. And I've heard, since I've been at the past 2 hearings, that most of the operations would be monitored by closed circuit TV. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. I also have heard that there would be card key entrance to the site. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, that is correct. What I have read in page 32 of 2012's annual report is that you say our information technology systems, which manage numerous aspects of our business, could be vulnerable to damage and interruption from power loss or natural disasters, security breaches, or computer viruses. Is that contained in your 2012 annual report?
I believe you're citing from the 10K report.
The 10K report, you're correct.
And I'm explaining the purpose of the 10K, which is...
Right, and you said there was a distortion to equate that to a safety issue, but it is stated in Global's words to that fact.
Yes.
Okay. So, IT systems are subject to failure. So that is human error. One other point I'd like to speak to, human error, is that in a Pullman and Colmley memo from July 23rd on page 6, 10.50.3 procedures, the quantity and type of material being stored is 560 gallons of propane as explained in the initial application packet dated March 31st, 2014, item 10. What have we been talking about all along? We have been talking about 540,000 gallons of propane, not 560,000. So I believe that is human error, is it not?
Good for you, lady.
After for Virginia is Vincent Semino.
Yes, good evening. My name is Virginia Woods. I'm a realtor in Guilford. I'm a resident of Guilford, and I'm a member of the Route 1 West Homeowners Association. We are fighting, albeit a smaller battle with propane, we are fighting. I know you want to hear something new, but I don't know if this commission understands. In 2009, on Soundview Avenue, there was a propane tanker truck that went over. The entire area had to be evacuated as quickly as possible. Fortunately, it didn't explode. Fortunately, they did get it uprighted, and things went back to normal. But that was a tremendous, tremendous shock to those residents that live there. I have seen purchases in that Guilford area, and I live right within the levee of what might be coming. I live within half a mile of where they're putting it up. I sympathize with Clinton, and I want Clinton to know that Guilford and the West End Route 1 Homeowners Association stands behind them in opposition to this. And I appreciate your time, and I appreciate all your work. Thank you.
After Vincent Semino is Kurt from Madison.
I submitted a letter earlier this evening to the commission. I am a real estate agent with the state of Connecticut, licensed by the state of Connecticut, and since 1984, and I've worked in the real estate industry as an agent, as a developer, and as an investor. And I'm telling you from my own personal experience, not that it takes a genius, but that this facility will affect local property values in the area. And the easiest acid test for that is, how many people in the audience here would consider buying a home on the street leading to this facility if this is approved? And please, the paid professionals in the corner, please participate in the exercise. Would you consider buying and living in a house on the street leading to the facility? Thank you. Yes.
We're not here to inflame the audience. We're here to submit empirical data. I can understand how anecdotally you reach any conclusion in the world. We understand the concept. Property values might be impacted, are likely. We're not going to take a poll in the audience. It's clearly against.
We just did, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, quite frankly, this is a public hearing, and I understand that you don't want redundancy, but by the same token, I believe that you're, in effect, discouraging people. If every single person in this room wanted to get up here and say, I'm opposed to this application, that's exactly what this meeting is for, and that's what we should be doing.
After Kurt, it is Paul from 13 Norwood Drive.
Kurt Sustak from Madison, Connecticut. Since you won't allow me to inflame the audience, I request permission to ask Ms. Whitney a few questions. If that's okay? Thank you. Ms. Whitney, the first question is, does your 10K say that your company is not fully insured? It does not say anywhere in there that you're not fully insured.
As I explained before, the 10K has to explain worst-case scenarios, and I believe what you're referring to is that it says that it is possible that the amount of insurance cannot cover all calamities that could happen. You will probably find that statement in every 10K of every major American corporation.
If you can just stay here. Next question is, does your 10K state that you do not control the drivers that will be coming to your plant?
We'll all be dead anyway.
I don't recall that. I don't recall that.
And would you believe me if I told you it did? Next question.
We've been on the record quite clearly that the drivers coming into the facility.
I'm sorry, I don't know who you are.
I don't know who you are.
Kurt Sustak from Madison.
Thank you. Dylan Remlin from Global.
Nice to meet you.
The drivers coming into the facility will be coming from third parties. We have stated that numerous times on the record. The information you're providing is not new.
Mr. Global, can you stand up?
Okay, that was a good answer. We're going to, so you don't control the driver, so if they get into an accident, taking a left out of the highway, driving through the center of Clinton, you're not responsible, are you, sir?
No different than any other trucking company in the state. If there's an accident, the trucking company for the driver, for which the driver is employed by, would be responsible for that accident. I apologize.
Okay, so I want to take you to Albany, where you have trains going from the Albany Port Terminal all the way to your propane terminal. Okay, if those trains have an accident, like an electrical line falling on them, are you responsible for that?
Mr. Chairman, do we have to continue this? We can go on with hypotheticals all night long.
If they block the 10K. You know what? I'll go. Well, she beat up on Miss Clinton for a little while, so I will move on. Okay. Miss Whitney.
You can ask questions, but the questions have to lead to a reasonable likelihood of that event. You know, I can think anything in the world, sir, and can extrapolate from a question, any response at all. You know that, you're an attorney, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, so you can appreciate that you can ask a question and elicit an answer that may not be based on actual facts. And if that's what you're trying to do...
No, I'm not. No, I'll move on. They mentioned the 10K, or I would bring it up, the fact what it says. That was Miss Whitney. I was asking her the questions.
You need to explain for the commission
Okay.
what a 10K
A 10K is an annual statement, and that would probably be better for Miss Whitney to explain, but I read their statement, they had that information in there. The next question...
Incidentally, we have.
I know, thank you, and I appreciate you mentioning that. The next question was, I wanted to ask Ms. Whitney, was July 31st, you submitted a letter to the board which referenced that your facilities fit within, sit nicely next to residential properties, correct? Attaches aerial photos to global facilities in Weathersfield, New Haven, Bridgeport, and Lexington, Massachusetts. In that, you said, it's obvious from the photograph that these facilities are close to residential properties.
Yes.
And you use those as a basis, those facilities as a basis to request that this board put this facility in, correct?
That is just one of a great many things that we have submitted to the commission.
Are you familiar with, let me step back on that. The one facility that you mentioned, how many trucks, or maybe one of your experts knows, how many trucks or trailer trucks or trains goes into the Lexington, Massachusetts facility? Would you know that?
The Lexington, Massachusetts facility is not a propane facility. The only reason I brought it up at all is because Ms. Clinton brought it up.
Her records didn't bring up that facility. Okay, and when you mention that, I just want to, for the record, the facility that you're mentioning in your letter, it fills your grill-sized propane, it tops off your camper, your mobile home propane. You can purchase kerosene there, and on-road diesel. You're comparing that facility, which is basically a gas station, to basically this train facility you have going on here.
No, I am not. I think the comparison is not a good one. It was brought up by other people, and that's why I discussed it. I do not think it's a good comparison whatsoever. But if you want to bring up the issue of property devaluation in the vicinity of fuel facilities, it is worth considering.
And for your Albany, when you wanted the properties that you considered, that you did a report on, it was a lot that was initially valued at $1,100. Is that correct?
Yes.
You're comparing that to Madison and Clinton?
Again, I do not think it is a particularly valuable comparison. As I have said now enough times that the commission must be very tired of hearing it. I don't think there is a good way to segregate a diminution in property value based on one particular item, such as nearness to a propane facility. In Clinton, as a matter of fact, where the regulation requires that a facility, that a tank be 100 feet from a residence, these homes in Clinton and in Madison are 1,180 feet from the tanks. And these homes, as I understand it, were built after this property was zoned industrial and used industrial. So anyone developing those properties knew that they were abutting an industrial property, and they developed it then at their peril, that in fact the property was being used as an industrial property, which it was. And in the case of Bostitch, it was being, there were deliveries made by rail and by truck at a much, much higher rate than will happen for the global facility.
Yeah.
So the people who developed that property and bought that property knew that they were living next to an industrial property, and they should have been aware of the potential there.
Now you're
But
calling
you're
the phone.
putting your facility next to Bounce, a children's business. There was an airport there, and that's going, but that's not in fact what you said. What you said was, there is no evidence to suggest that the property values in the vicinity will be adversely affected by the presence of this use at this site. That reminds me of the cigarette companies who 20 years ago used to say, there's no evidence that this caused cancer. My mother died of cancer. Thank you. In Albany, there are 300 cars, at least, sitting between the two terminals. They say they have no control of, but they're waiting to go into the port facility. The governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, had to write a letter to the President of the United States to actually complain about it. Maybe Global wasn't checking their voicemail. They have no control of the tracks. They're not going to control the vehicles. They're not going to control the drivers. This is just a bad idea. So I appreciate the extra time you gave me. Thank you.
After Paul is Walter Lippman.
Hello, my name is Paul Taboda. I live at 13 Oakwood Drive. I'll be very quick. I am opposed to this, obviously. I don't see how the town could say it's safe for these trucks to go down the road. I hate to go back to the trucks, but for some reason this town doesn't find it safe enough for a school bus to pick my son up at my house or anywhere on the road. My son has to go to Route 1 and go down right past the water company. I think it's Lumber something road. I apologize for not knowing the name, but it's not my road. Why can't a school bus be safe enough to go down there? These trucks should be allowed in there. Thank you.
After Walter is Hank Stein.
Hi, my name is Walter Lippman. I'm a 22-year resident of Madison. I'm going to talk to you from a standpoint that I don't think anybody else has brought up. I've dealt with the Connecticut Department of Transportation. I own adjoining property to the railroad. I own the last piece of property in Connecticut before you hit the New York state line where you go over the Byron River. For a long time, I complained to Metro North and the Department of Transportation about the unsafetiness of a retaining wall that was holding the railroad bed up. Nobody wanted to do anything until one day.
Oh, well, we know.
And the wall was making noises. And I dialed 911. And every train was stopped, leaving New York, going up Metro North's tracks all the way to Boston. And there were news helicopters flying around, there were state senators, all the representatives of the great town of Greenwich, first selectmen and other associated people, the police department, the fire department, Metro North, police were there. And the boys that had told me previously, there's no money to repair this, all of a sudden came up with the money, and the railroad immediately fixed the retaining wall. Previously, I had told them, look, fellas, I don't want anything. I want you to just come and fix this retaining wall. Just return my property to the state that it was before. I don't want anything for it. However, if one of your choo-choo trains falls in my backyard, and you haven't done anything about this, I'm not going to let you get the train out. It is very, very difficult in this state. I don't know what the finances are of DOT at this point. I work very closely with somebody who's now deceased, who was assistant supervisor for Connecticut DOT. But money is short. Who is going to be responsible for making sure that the railroad bed that these tanker cars are going to be going on is safe up to the current standards and maybe beyond? That's one issue here. But I'm also worried about my property taxes. Although I live in Madison, I'm within a half a mile of Route 79. And I think that if we had a problem with any trucks going over, down the coast road and up 79, the danger there, or if there was any explosion, we have both 95 and the rail beds within 200 feet of each other with railroad bridges over 79. That would be a significant problem for the 95 and also for the railroad. Also, I'd just like to say in ending this weekend, oh wait, I have one other thing I wanted to just mention. There was, I think Global had a significant, I don't know, maybe it wasn't Global. In Canada, 47 people were killed on July 5th, 2013 in a town called Lake Megantic, M-E-G-A-N-T-I-C. And I think you'll find that that was due to a propane explosion. Propane also, unlike natural gas vents can go straight up into the sky in the atmosphere. Liquid propane will follow the course of the ground, and it will travel beyond where the leak occurs. It's not going to go straight up. I'm a retired police officer from New York State. I give all the credit in the world to the local fire departments. I think somebody said something before that I don't particularly agree with. They train very, very hard. But I don't know how much training they get on these rail cars. I don't know if either Madison or Clinton, I don't have any experience with either fire department. I don't know whether they have the equipment to deal with this, such as we have in New York, where we have equipment that can pierce the fuselage of an airplane and pump foam in. I don't know if they have it here. And the last thing I want to say, over this weekend, there was an explosion in New Jersey, and there was an explosion in a factory that was making eggnog flavor. That explosion blew out the rear of the building, caused serious injuries. But I don't think eggnog can compare with a liquid propane that may be visited upon us if you will grant this application. Thank you very much for your time. That's a very difficult job.
Einstein, Mohawk Drive, Clinton. First of all, I'd like to say one or two people seem to imply that the commission had its mind made up and was going to approve this facility. And for what the chairman and the members seemed to say was, we will give unbiased decision. So I would say that I believe that, and anyone that implies differently certainly is wrong. The other thing I would like to say is, as a retired mechanical engineer, who also worked in the chemical industry, and I apologize, Mr. D'Elia, but this is a dangerous, dangerous facility. A town in Texas had a facility for producing, pardon me, I'm a little nervous. And it blew the whole town up. It was supposed to be a safe fertilizer facility. The whole city went up. This is a dangerous facility, no matter how you look at it, and I urge you unbiasedly to vote against this application. Oh, sorry. One other thing that I'm being nervous I forgot. And as an ex-member of the fire department, I would say that the training there is top-notch, and even if this facility were built, I'm sure the fire department would take it into account in their training and train their members well to handle it.
Jeff Cashman?
My name is Jeff Cashman. I live at 66 River Road in Clinton. I'm going to speak against the propane deal tonight. I don't really think that it's really a valuable asset to our community. I feel bad for Global Propane tonight. I want to address you folks over there. You have some really hard-working people in the town of Clinton, and you failed to even concern yourself with making sure that our safety in our town was a #1 priority over the dollars that you would make. I think the first thing I want to address when I went to the other meeting was the gentleman I believe the town hired pranced around like a clown. I was totally embarrassed to think that somebody with a degree of engineering couldn't answer some of the questions right off the bat. I was floored. I was absolutely floored. I expected to come in to see safety valves cut out so people could see them. I have a CDL license and I can drive tractor trailer. I'm one of the safest drivers in the world. Some of the hardest things are people when they drive their cars, and those are probably 80% of the accidents out there. I think it's kind of sad. Today, I've always maintained my equipment as if I went by your family. I maintain my equipment, my health, the tires, every bit of it as a business owner because people like Global Propane, their wives and their daughters were right next to me on a big piece of equipment. That took priority over my pocket. That took priority over my business. It took priority over because of the safety of each one of you people that I went by. Today, I haven't heard that. I haven't heard anybody say that we adore the people in the town of Clinton. I haven't heard anybody say your safety is #1. I think that's sad. I feel personally that Global has failed our community to present a good, safe, anything to us. And I think that's why you're all nervous. We hear all of the nightmares that happen. We can picture everything happening. When you own a hardware store, the only difference between safety and your gas grill is about a 12-cent O-ring from swapping that tank back and forth. And you know what the odor is, so I can only imagine when I get my 1,000-gallon propane tank on our farm filled for the generators during the wintertime. We smell that propane for a day, okay? And at that point, I can only imagine 20 fills in these trucks going back and forth, and some of these trucks can even go underneath the bridge for 81 because they're fairly low in height. We have these trucks that can go anywhere on Route 1, anywhere under the bridge, any exit that they want, any time, day or night during the week. And to be honest with you, like some of your folks on Call the Drive are concerned about, you're right. You have homes there. There were people that went to jobs there and they went home. It wasn't a trucking outfit that was involved with trucks back and forth. So tonight, while the board has a huge responsibility, and I think that these people, and so I applaud you for keeping everything intact tonight. I think that was one of your jobs as a commission to take that forward. was to sit here and to make sure everybody had a right, Global had a right to come in and to apply, to put that in here. But we as residents have a right also too, and I applaud each one of you to come out tonight to say that you were against it. Those are our rights. But the commission has a right also too, and I think that because we voted some of the greatest people on the board, we should give them a chance to do their job. They have listened to us, and I give them all the credit in the world. Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any specific questions of any of the applicant's experts? If you do, this is your moment. If not, I do. Attorney Whitney, you indicated that the engineer Doug Fontaine is here. He's the one that prepared the project memorandum to address some of the questions, if not all of the questions that I posed at an earlier time. Is he here? Okay. Who prepared the memorandum? They both did, so I can ask either one of them. Okay, so the questions can be answered by either one or both. And I want to take you specifically to page 2 of your memorandum, where you address condition number 2, local rail collisions. And I'd like to ask you some specific questions regarding your assumptions. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5th bullet point on that page 2 talks about a train derailment near the property would not travel the shortest perpendicular distance to the tanks. The following overestimated scenario maps a worst-case track departure path at a track departure angle of 30 degrees. The derailed rail cars must travel 375 feet before reaching the proposed LPG tanks. First question, why are you assuming a track departure angle of 30 degrees? What if the train derails? You're over there, sorry. What if the train were to derail before the facility at an angle smaller than 30 degrees? In other words, a narrower angle, 10, 15 degrees. Why are you assuming 30?
We chose 30. Typically, when trains on a straight section depart from the rail, they run at an angle to the rail that's very, very small. We actually chose 30 degrees because it was a wider angle and therefore would be actually closer to the tanks than if it was at a smaller departure angle of 10 or 15 degrees. When you look at rail derailments, they, on a straight stretch, they're parallel to the rail more than striking out at a big angle of 45 or 90 degrees. So 30 would seem to be an overcompensation, a conservative estimate that would allow the shortest distance of travel to the tank.
So are you saying 30 degrees is the worst case scenario? Is that what you're saying?
Worst, it's the most conservative, reasonable case.
Most conservative in what sense?
That a departure greater than 30 is unlikely. A departure less than 30 is less conservative because it runs perhaps more parallel to the track, therefore to get to the tank, it have to travel further.
But doesn't it depend on where it departs? It could be a quarter mile behind the facility.
By then, the energy dissipates. So you have to allow for energy dissipation. The shortest distance to the tank carries the most energy forward. So if it runs parallel to the track, it has to run further.
Are you assuming a constant speed?
No, assuming that the engine decelerates, the car will decelerate once it leaves the track, it slows down.
No, the train is traveling at a constant speed on the rail before it derails. Okay. And that speed is computed. So you're utilizing 110 miles an hour. Departure angle of 30 degrees yields the shortest travel distance to the facility, to the closest tank. Okay. Now you're also assuming the Acela is 8 cars, correct? Okay. Assuming it has 8 cars, you're also basing your conclusions on 5 of them derailing. Is that correct? Okay. Did you compute what force that is equivalent to under your worst case scenario?
To be honest, no, because if what we modeled there,
Just vote this thing down.
It's not a force calculation. You're talking about a distance calculation off the track. I think we sort of said qualitatively there that realistically the force of a train, the actual force of a train hitting into a tank or something along those lines is not, there's not a meaningful figure that you can arrive to if that's what you're getting at.
force is correct, depending on the angle.
Correct. There are different factors that figure into the forces, and that those degrees of freedom, what we call them, there's enough of them so that calculation, the force based on the velocity, the derailment, the earth slowing the train down, is difficult to model. But we do know from experience that as train cars derail, the more cars that derail, the faster it slows down. And at 375 feet, that's a distance that's further than is typical on straight line, straight run derailment. It would be a different issue if it was on curve. It's not.
All right, assuming this worst case scenario that you use as your assumption,
Does that
breach a tank, does that breach the tank, that kind of impact? Breach it, if it collides with it. If there's a collision between the cars, 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, and one or more of these tanks, would the tanks be breached? Breach meaning...
Rip open.
Breach meaning there's a rupture. There's a rupture in the tank.
You're rocket scientists, what do you expect?
Let me try this a different way. If for somehow, some reason, the train, the engine, one of the cars reached the tank, the engine itself outweighs the tank, so it would push it out, at least push it out of the way, and it may, in fact, break the tank. It's entirely possible that could happen. But you've reached a conclusion that's not plausible because the distance that the train would have to travel to hit the tank is further than it's reasonable to assume that it would come off when they happen to the track. If it got there, it would likely dislodge the tank and it may in fact break it. But there's no reasonable assumption that would get it that far.
Yeah. They're sinking.
So you're saying a car, a Acela, traveling 110 miles an hour would not reach the tanks? That's what you're saying?
At 33 parts per
I think you're full of shit.
Well, that begs the question, is there an angle at which it would reach it?
Mike.
30 degrees is an exaggeration of the most reasonable part distance. To get further than that, you have to try to figure out how the train would take a right.
Okay. Assuming that were to happen, worst case scenario, there's a breach or a rupture of the tank, what happens next? Is there an explosion with shrapnel being,
When the tanks fail, they fail in big pieces, not little pieces. Typically, when an LP tank fails, it lays open. The ends can come off, the ends can travel, but the tank, the main body of the tank will lay open as opposed to blow off in really little pieces.
Oh, come on.
and you're saying the propane liquid at that point does not ignite?
Oh, no, I didn't say that. I said that like you fire.
Okay. Is that the levy effect that we've heard about?
It actually depends on the size of the hole and how it ends up. Levies occur with a rapid evacuation of the gas, and when the gas changes from liquid to gas. When that occurs, that's when the tanks fail all over the place. If the tank is already broken, then that pressure is somewhat relieved, the fire, and it'll be a big fire, there's no doubt about it. But the likelihood of having the tank travel any distance is less likely than when you have a small puncture when the liquid tries to change to gas inside the tank, and then it pushes the tank out. If you liken it to making popcorn, which is the same effect, the way you make popcorn, there's a little bit of moisture inside the popcorn kernel. When it pops, we all know it gets a little bit bigger. If the popcorn kernel was split already, then it doesn't pop, it just boils the liquid away. It's similar to that. A big hole actually makes a little bit less risk of having tank parts trapped.
Yeah. Boom is a boom.
Am I understanding you correctly then that you're talking about a localized fire, albeit pretty sizable? And you don't have the scenario here where the Acela runs into one of these side rails with cars that have propane tanks on them, correct? You're not anticipating that event. The ones that are in the facility, but they haven't been emptied or downloaded, but are still sitting on the side rail. Now the Acela, bear me out, I know it's a hypothetical. The Acela derails and hits one of those tanks. One of those tankers, I guess you'd call it. Different scenario, correct? More impactful?
Oh my God.
It may or may not have a different impact, but we have to keep in mind that rail cars are designed different than stationary tanks. There's more protection built into the rail cars because of past incidents. They improved the quality and construction of the rail cars to limit what can happen that's bad in a train derailment. So depending on how the train hit it, the car may be designed to absorb that energy.
May not be designed to absorb that.
It may be designed, it's designed to take a big hit, the rail cars, because of past history in the 70s. That's why we went through all this. Design of new rail cars, design of new trucks to transport it, design of internal valves to make sure things slam shut. So depending on how the cars got hit, it would make a difference on what would happen. But if it hit it on the side somehow, then likely there would be a puncture. And you would have a localized fire with that car, and again, it won't be, if it's full, it won't be a small fire, but it's not likely to be a big explosion.
Doesn't that depend on where that car ends up, though? I mean, it's closer to 375 feet to the storage facility, is it not?
Real car, just a storage. Yeah, it's closer.
How much closer?
180 feet, 190 feet, something like that, I think. I don't know exactly, so anything I can.
Seems to be an awful lot they don't know. Either way, my little storage facility ain't offering terrorism insurance anymore.
Have you had an opportunity or have you even thought of calculating the likelihood of the Acela or another train going by at a slower speed, colliding after derailment with a tanker that is on the side yard? And the net result of that would be in terms of where that tanker might end up? Assuming it strikes at that 35-degree angle that you speak of, 30-degree angle you speak of, is it likely to be propelled, pushed into the facility and collide with one of the tanks, one or more of the tanks that are stationary?
No, more likely to tip over off the rail than to be pushed along. Because the 30-degree angle has enough of an angle of impact with the car to tip it over as opposed to pushing down the rail.
But have you folks calculated all these potential?
No. Of course not.
I don't have any further questions. Anybody else on the commission have any questions?
To the applicant, some definitions. When the propane is say did leak, is it a liquid or a gas form?
It's a gas.
Yes, whoever wants to answer the question.
Depending on where the leak is, it could be a liquid, it could be gas. The top part of the tank is always gas. The tanks are never full of liquid. There's always room for expansion and vapor. So somehow magically there's something happens to the top of the tank, you'll get gas. Everywhere else you get liquid. But you have to keep in mind that all the valving and everything is all interconnected. So if one leak trips an excess flow valve, everything stops.
With that said, when they fill the tanks up, is it a gaseous system or the liquid?
80%.
Yes. The rail to the tank and then the tank to the trucks. Everything's liquid. Okay.
Everything moves as liquid, but remember that in order to keep everything balanced, so we don't overpressurize something, you've got to move gas backwards to fill the void that was taken up by the liquid that you just pumped out. So it's a liquid movement in one direction and a gas movement in the other, just to balance the pressure.
Global people, representatives, do you see, I think you said the wintertime is going to be more usage of this. Will the summertime, would that reduce, and by how much?
The company estimates that the summer volume will be about 25% of the winter volume. And winter volume is only a few months, actually.
Yeah.
Time frame is what, December to January, December to March?
What do you count as the winter months?
The winter heating season would typically be November 15th through the end of March. We really call it December 1 through the end of March. It's 4 months, 4.5 months.
That's all I have.
These
excess flow valves that you're talking about, we seem reliant on those to contain a leak. Are they warranted, guaranteed by the manufacturer as a safety mechanism, or are they simply valves you order and hope that work? Secondly, if the valve fails, liquid gas comes out, liquid comes out at the bottom. How far can it travel?
She's got dragging nuts with the camera.
The system is set up with multiple redundants. There's excess flow valves, there's manual valves, there's automatic valves, so that, and they're all warranted by the manufacturer. They all act differently, and there's a redundant system in place, so that one single valve failing does not upset the system. Remember 2 months ago, whenever it was, I talked about the nitrogen system that held all the valves open. So one valve failing, all the rest of the valves still have to work. They'll shut, so that you don't get that excess flow. The biggest leak you could have that would be liquid is about an 80-foot run that we estimate will happen from the rail car to one of the 45,000s. That leak would be liquid. That leak, according to all the tables that we see, is effectively dissipated in about 80 or 90, 100 feet. It's not far before the gas is mixed enough with air so that it's not flammable. So that the whole premise of the system is to work on no leaks and small releases based on broken pipes.
Broken pipes.
Do you have any more questions? Anyone else? Well, I have 2 other issues that I want to take up with you, and probably Attorney Whitney might be the best one to respond. I want to go back to that 14-foot fence. I don't believe I ever saw a definitive statement from you acknowledging or pointing out the conflict that you indicated exists. Am I incorrect in assuming, not assuming that, in concluding that? Both.
Well, we're really not arguing about the height because we're perfectly willing to make it 14 feet high. The opaqueness, I would have to agree with you that the language in the regulations does not have the clarity that one would like. I can tell you that the problems with the propane from a containment standpoint is how they address it. Where you want to contain a gas leak or you want to contain an oil leak, you don't want to contain, a gasoline leak, not a vapor leak. You don't want to contain a propane leak because it will be a gas and that would be less safe. And all the experts believe that any form of containment is not a good thing for propane and in fact is not allowed. And they consider an opaque fence as a form of containment. So they say it should be a chain link fence, not an opaque fence that you can't see through. Your fire department will tell you the same thing. We have spoken with the fire department to confirm that, and they said absolutely. And they're not so much thinking of containment as they're thinking of it from a safety visual perspective, that if there's a problem there, for instance, if there's a fire there, they want to see it, and they want to be able to get to it. They can get to it through a chain link fence, but not an opaque fence.
Well, that puts us on the horns of a dilemma because we cannot vary that requirement. And it's essentially the issue I raised with you at the first hearing, where, how do we get around it if that's our requirement? You're not going to give us an opaque fence. you're going to need ZBA to give you a variance. We can't give it to you under the case that we discussed.
I believe that the opinion that you have from Attorney Slater says that you can, because in fact this requirement is superseded by state law. So you're...
That's what I addressed earlier. There is no clear indication from any of your memoranda that there is a conflict upon which we could make that decision.
Well, maybe that's a matter of opinion, but everyone's opinion is that those regulations that say no secondary containment applies to an opaque fence. That would be a form of secondary containment which is not allowed. Perhaps you want to ask your expert or the attorney or the fire department, but you will find them all saying the same thing, no opaque fence.
The other question that I had to pertains to the traffic or the movement of the trucks coming out of Knollwood and turning right or west on Route 1. Based upon both the traffic study that you submitted and the traffic study that we obtained, there's a problem there with the size of the trucks and the turning radius that can be anticipated at that intersection. I'm calling it an intersection, even though I don't believe there's a light there. There is a light at that intersection. Given that fact and your representation that you're going to work it out, what assurance do we have as commissioners that that is sufficient? I mean, I don't see how we can kind of let that go by.
I actually have two kind of different responses to that. Number one, it's a problem today. There's a moving and storage business on Knollwood that has very large trucks that clearly can't make that turn. And when Stanley was operating there, they had very large trucks that can't make the turn with the ease that you would like. And yet it's operated that way for a long time. However, I would agree that it would be better to fix that turning radius. And the best I can tell you is that the property owner and the first selectman have said that if this was approved, it would be fixed. It involves a very small amount of property to fix the radius. And in fact, our traffic consultant has figured out exactly what would be needed there. Obviously, I can't tell you today that it's solved, but, and I don't know, and you might want to ask Attorney Slater if you can condition an approval on fixing that issue, but if possible, you can't do it. I don't know. The best I can tell you is that, I have to believe the first selectman and the executor of the estate of the property owner, who are both saying we will see that the problem is fixed, and obviously Global will work with them in order to do that.
I don't mean to debate it with you, but the application is today and now, and it has certain requirements and conditions, and you address them as best you can. And that particular issue, as far as I'm concerned, is not resolved. I mean, would you agree that you think it's resolved because the first selectman said something?
Mr. Chairman, the police commission, no comments at this point.
Obviously, I'm not giving you a completely solved problem. I'm giving you a good faith statement by these two people that it can be solved. I would also mention that there's ample court decisions that say that for a special use facility, it is assuming actually that if the property is zoned for this particular use, that the road system is adequate to serve that use, and that it can't be used as a reason for denial if in fact the property is zoned for an industrial use. And this particular problem has existed there for a long time without, to the best of my knowledge, any incidents there. And neither your traffic expert nor ours related any history of accidents. So although it's not the best possible situation right now, it doesn't seem to have been a crucial situation up until now.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question. I have actually two questions. I don't know much about guns, but I watch television occasionally, and I've seen what appeared to be explosive projectiles that not only penetrate metal armor, but explode. What would the effect of that kind of projectile be on the tanks?
RPG?
There is a section in that memo on firearms. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
You can get an armor-piercing round that will definitely puncture a tank, no doubt about it. Whether or not there's an explosion that follows it, not sure. Nobody ever is. But normal ammunition that you buy will not penetrate. These tanks are 3/4-inch mild steel, not thin little wafers. I can devise a shell that'll pull a hole, no doubt. But normal ammunition from people that are out on the street will not puncture the tank.
Second question relates to what happens when 95 is a two-lane road running basically from Guilford to the Rhode Island border. What happens, as frequently does happen, particularly in the summer, when an event closes 95? What will happen to the truck routing? I know you don't have control over that, but
I would ask you what happens today, because there are propane trucks on the roads today. I imagine they get caught in traffic like everybody else does. But I don't know how else to answer your question, really.
Well, the answer is that the traffic gets diverted basically onto Route 1. That's the closest east-west alternate.
Then, perhaps that's what happens. We can spin out all the difficulties that could happen all night. And if people are dealing with that problem now, which they must be, then these drivers would obviously also deal with it.
Any more questions from the commissioners? If not, Attorney Whitney, do you want to rebut anything that was said or done previously?
Thank you, I do. I have a number of comments I'd like to make in response to some of the things that were said, and then a conclusion, and I don't think it'll take very long. You heard from several real estate people about having to warn people about the presence of propane if this were to happen. There are propane facilities in Clinton today, and I wonder if they are warning people today about the several locations where there are significant propane facilities in Clinton today. Do the buyers already know about these facilities? And I would have to add that my understanding is the regulations that you have and that we are complying with today have only been in place for about 2 years. So a lot of or probably all of the propane facilities in town now don't begin to have the protections in place that you now dictate as being required. As I said before, Clinton's regulations only require a 100-foot distance from residents. You heard a lot about traffic problems. 2 traffic engineers said there are no traffic problems. That turn is the only issue that needs to be dealt with. Your fire department is fully trained and fully equipped and fully ready to respond. You have heard no negative comments from the fire department about this application. I think it's kind of distressing that people are underestimating their hard work and their ability. There will be no truck traffic at night. Your regulations from this facility, your regulations don't allow it. And as described, the volume of truck traffic will be much lighter in the summer when your normal traffic in Clinton is much heavier. I would point out that although you've heard a lot of complaints about this and a lot of concern about this, none of the town's own experts have expressed any problems with this application. There is a question about approve this and then there'll be no regulation. I mean, that couldn't be further from the truth. This is a heavily regulated industry. The state and federal regulations will certainly remain in place, and your fire department is charged with inspecting the facility and making sure that's true. We are not downplaying the terrorism issue. We have to comply with the chemical safety, the law that I never remember the full name of, but the acronym is CFACT. We have to comply with that. What we said before was that the Department of Homeland Security does not apparently consider facilities like this a major risk, but we still have to comply with all those regulations. We can't do anything about the sun, but I understand that can be a real problem at certain times of the night. Rail cars full of propane and other fuels travel through Clinton every day right now, and we're not aware of any concerns with that. The accident in Canada was not propane, it was crude oil. I'm very distressed with the comment that we don't care about Clinton's citizens or its safety. All of this discussion is about safety. Your regulations are about safety. The multiple layers of regulations with which we have to comply are all about safety. So it is distressing and incorrect to say that we don't care about safety. Safety is the very first concern, and will remain the very first concern. This has been a very long process, and we appreciate the attention that you and the staff have given this application, which has been extraordinary. What we regret is that there has been a lot of bad information that has been spread to the residents, and their fears have been excuse me, fed by a lot of this incorrect information. A lot of the calamities that you've heard described are not only unlikely to happen, they don't involve propane, and they certainly don't involve the very large facilities that we're talking about here, which are much more heavily regulated than the little propane tank that you get to feed your barbecue. Clinton has defined what is necessary to operate a safe propane facility in your regulations, and Global complies with all those requirements. It's a heavily regulated industry operated with a real concern for safety. In Clinton, this facility would be on property that is zoned for this use, where most of the property can remain undeveloped to preserve the natural beauty of the site. The operations will be more than 1,000 feet from the nearest residence and not visible from anywhere except the railroad tracks. The designation of a particular piece of property as a permitted use establishes a presumption that that use does not adversely affect the district where it's located and precludes further industry into its effect on the general harmony of the district. You have already decided that this use is in general harmony with the district. The town has set strict standards for operating this business, and the business should be judged on the facts and not on speculation. And again, we thank you very much for your consideration.
If there's nothing further from the commissioners, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Abstaining. This public hearing is closed. We can hear no more evidence. So please, thank you for your attendance, your concerns, and for the most part, your very much appreciated courtesy. Thank you.